Greetings, this is Paul the Poke from PaulthePoke.com, and welcome everybody to This Week in Prophecy. We got the Pope denies hell. Going to talk a little bit about Russia, China, and banking woes. So, to get started, we will talk about, or we will hear from Jesus. Matthew 10, verse 28, and do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So Jesus says hell is a literal place, literal physical place. And tons of places we can find this in Scripture. We're not going to look all of these up. Luke 12, verse 5, for those of you who want to verify this, if you're not familiar with some of these scriptures. Also, Revelation 20, verse 14 and 15, Revelation 21, verse 8, specifically discusses a place called the lake of fire. People get cast into the lake of fire when it's all said and done. Little sidebar, that was meant for angels, fallen angels. It wasn't meant for people. But yet, people end up there. And now we will go to Pope Francis. Pope Francis denies the physical existence of a literal place called hell. Here's a quote from the Pope. Hell is not a place. If one goes to attend the last judgment, that'd be also known as the Great White Throne, if we're going to be specific, and sees the faces of those who go to hell, one gets scared. If you read Dante, you get scared. But these are media representations, according to Francis. He would further go on to say hell is a state. There are people who live in hell continuously. And again, those are the quotes from Francis. Now, with these comments, and he made some others, the Vatican went into spin mode. Here is a quote, press release from the Holy See press office. All official final texts of the Holy Father are found on the Vatican website. And since they were never published by the Holy See press office, they should not be considered official texts. Okay, therefore, it wasn't printed. It's not real. Thank you very much for that clarification. He still said it. But this was not on the Holy See. Here's the article from LifeSiteNews.com. Pope Francis denies that hell is a place. Says it's a posture towards life. You know, we had a real person quoting him, but because it wasn't on the official Catholic doctrinal website, it doesn't count. Whatever. He said some interesting things throughout his career as Pope. Here's another one. And for those of you who want to read this, I've got a link provided for all these things as usual. You can read this. Kind of paraphrasing, hell is a state. It's a state of the heart, of the soul, of a posture towards life, towards values, towards the family, towards everything. There are people who live in hell because they seek it. There are others who do not, who are suffering. And who goes to hell, to that state, they are already living from here. He doesn't think it's real. Like you die and then where do you go, Francis? I don't know. Well, purgatory, I do know. I've heard that too. And then eventually, like a little holding cell. You can read this article, and they go on, you know, and that's the thing too. And I'm not going to get into Catholic teaching. That's not the issue. But he contradicts Catholic teaching on the existence of hell. I mean, Catholics believe it's a real place. Jesus talks about it, going to everlasting punishment, Matthew 25:46. Luke 16:22, he was buried in hell. I mean, so they know, and even the rich man, you know, staring across with Lazarus in the bosom of Abraham. That's not hell, but that wasn't a good place either. He didn't like it. You know, Matthew 13, verse 41, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's plenty of scriptural evidence and support to indicate there is a real physical place called hell, and it's described. But nonetheless, Francis says otherwise. So here's the link, lifesitenews.com. And from there, we're going to skip over to Ezekiel 38, the sons of Magog and Rosh, modern day Russia. Now, if you want more details on that, you can click on this link. This is an old post I made back in 2015. So we're going back over 8 years ago now. Here's the actual link to it. And it's just historical evidence for ancient Magog being modern day Russia. Follow the genealogy from Genesis 10. The Greeks, or actually it's not the Greeks, it's Josephus. Josephus connects the dots, that the Scythians, they are ancient Magogians. And it was the Greeks who called the Magogians Scythians. New Testament in Colossians 3:11 makes comment to the Scythian. Even a Scythian, even a Magogian, a Russian can be saved. Secular history, 7th century BC. Greek poet, identified the Scythians, modern day Russia. And that's the thing too, Russia, if you listen to Russia, today's Russians identify as Scythians. They're proud to be Scythians. They have museums in Russia clinging to their Scythian past. They're proud of it. And, they're even like, they found some of these folks in ice and now they're trying to clone them, bring back these ultimate warrior types. They're Scythians, they're Russians, they're Magogians, they're one and the same. So anyway, they're in the news. Tension is on the rise with Russia attempting to spray a U.S. drone with jet fuel over the Black Sea and international waters. Now, the Russian pilot got a little too close for comfort and appears to graze the drone. So the Pentagon European Command published a video showing the events resulting in this. There are two passes here. Here's the first one. Here he comes by, looks like a dog just going to hike up and spray this drone. And, gets a little close there. Spraying with jet fuel. This is the US MQ-9 Reaper drone. And this is a Russian Su-27 fighter jet over the Black Sea on March 14th. Here's the one where it gets a little too close, and it's like, dude, either don't get cocky or stay off the vodka. I don't know which one it is, but he clearly clips this thing, knocks the drone offline for a little bit, and then he hits it. And here's how we know he hits it. Look at the propeller. I'm going to back this up here, and then we'll ease into it. Right there. Look at that propeller. It's bent. There, right there. Whoops. You can see one of the propellers is bent. There's the bent one again. But nonetheless, he got a little bit too close. Tried to spray a little jet fuel on it. Got some jet fuel on the drone. Also clipped the propeller of said drone. It's like, come on, man. That's just overconfidence or whatever. But my little Chihuahua can do a better job than that without hitting. I mean, my Chihuahua can hit the target. He can do it better than a Su-27 fighter pilot. Just saying. Quite the shot there. Also, with that, the International Criminal Court has issued a warrant for the arrest of Russian President Vladimir Putin as a war criminal for illegally exporting Ukrainian children. Now, this is from Twitter homepage there, International Criminal Court. You can follow them. Situation in Ukraine. ICC judges issue arrest warrants against Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. So I did not know his middle name was Vladimirovich. So we will click on this and you can read the charges yourself. Actually, let's go back. This is the judge, Judge Piotr Hofmansky, on recent arrest warrants against Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova in the context of the situation in Ukraine. He's reading off the charges as to what they're being charged for. Now, apparently, I saw a video of Vladimir and Maria, and it did kind of look like there was some child trafficking and smuggling going on within the context of their conversation. And she was starstruck when she was talking to him. Just my observation. If that was the real deal, I don't know if it was or not. But here's the head judge out of The Hague in the Netherlands at the International Criminal Court, the ICC, levying the charges. Now, does anybody think that Putin's going to get arrested? He's not going to any of these countries that are participating in the ICC to get arrested. Here's the website, and here's the post. And here are the actual charges. I'm just going to read Mr. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin's charges. Born October 7, 1952, allegedly responsible for war crime of unlawful deportation of population, quote, children, and that of unlawful transfer of children from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation under Articles of the Rome Statute. Crimes allegedly committed Ukrainian occupied territory, at least from February 24th, 2022. So they've got it going from the start of it. She's essentially accused of the same thing. In her title, she's the Commissioner for Children's Rights in the office of President of the Russian Federation. So the Commissioner of Children's Rights is being charged with unlawful deportation of population of children. And I saw somewhere the first time Putin's going to have an opportunity to be outside of Russia is going to be in South Africa. Everybody's saying that's when he's getting arrested. He's not getting arrested. I'll be stunned. If he gets arrested, World War III starts in 30 minutes after that. He's not getting arrested. Anyway, so they're upset about that. We're going to leave Russia. We're going to come back to Russia because it's all going to circle back to Russia. And we're going to transfer to Revelation 9, verse 16. And the number of mounted troops was 200 million. I heard their number. Well, only two armies have the population to pull that off. India and China. My money's on China. I can be wrong, but they are far more hostile, far more aggressive. And we have tension increasing in the Pacific. The United States and the United Kingdom have agreed to sell nuclear submarines to Australia. And they had a little powwow. I guess it was the leaders of Australia, United States, and the UK in San Diego. And they met in San Diego where they housed these LA-class nuclear subs. So the symbolism of that was interesting. Also, separately, I can't make sense of if this is part of the agreement or if this is a separate agreement, but the United States has also sold 220 Tomahawk cruise missiles to Australia. And Japan has expressed interest in buying cruise missiles as well from the United States. And this is a graphic from the Daily Mail. This is the article. We're going to go to it. I'll show you that here in just a second. And you'll be able to click on this if you want to read these things. But it does compare China and the United States defense budgets. United States is spending about 3.5 to 1 over China. China says they have an active military personnel of 2 million. We apparently have 1.39 million. Tanks. China has more tanks. They have 12,566 tanks. Rocket artillery. China has a little more. Nuclear warheads. China has 350. We allegedly have 5,550. I don't know how many Russia has. That would be interesting. Now, we clearly have a bigger naval presence, although China is gaining with submarines. They have 2 aircraft carriers. We have 11. Just a brief breakdown. And this is an article. Checkmate recommended this to me. The new Cold War will make Putin's Ukraine invasion look like a sideshow. As China puts its economy on a war footing, today's submarine deal is only the start of what the West must do. And going back to these aircraft carriers, we've got the bulk of our aircraft carriers in the Pacific theater. I think we have one in the Mediterranean with what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, but we have at least 4 off the top of my head, maybe 5 in and around Japan, North Korea, the Philippines, and Australia. So we have China kind of on alert in case you want to do anything. And we say we're going to defend Taiwan. I don't. We'll see. We say we are. There's Rishi Sunak. That's Prime Minister of the UK. And there's Australian Prime Minister Albanese. He met in San Diego as well. Joe made it over there as he made the trip to San Diego. There's Xi. Let's see if there was anything. I don't think there was anything else. But this will all circle back around. U.S. agrees to sell 220 Tomahawk missiles to Australia. This is from CNN. A link's provided to this as well. 1.3 billion Australian dollars. That'd be 895 million American U.S. dollars. Contract to sell these Tomahawk cruise missiles. Japan announced its intention to buy hundreds of the missiles. They have a range of about 621 miles. You're going to hear a lot. Remember this acronym, AUKUS, AUKUS, AUKUS. That's Australia, United Kingdom, US. That's what they call this triumvirate of countries, the AUKUS. They're getting together. We'll be hearing more about that, I suspect. And then this is where all this cycles back to Russia. So this broke yesterday, late yesterday, Friday. China's President Xi is headed to Moscow early next week, I think on Monday or Tuesday. And of course, the focus is on peace. President Xi wants to talk peace, brokering peace between Russia and Ukraine. Now, this was floated out there earlier and fell flat on its face in a hurry. Now, some think, and I'd be in this camp, some think China is on the verge of a weapons deal with the Russians because the Russians are running out of hardware with everything that's going on in Ukraine. They're buying things from Iran, and these two are clearly buddies now. And some people think that, Vladimir Putin says, hey, we'll sell you some oil and gas. How about you float us some equipment, military equipment? This is a comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation in the name of peace, of course. Now we're warning Beijing, don't you do it. Don't do it. Okay. A foreign ministry spokeswoman said China would uphold an objective and fair position and play a constructive role in promoting talks for peace. Well, we're just going to talk about it. We don't want it. The fact the Chinese leader is going to Russia signals Beijing's strong support for Moscow. Well, yeah, no kidding. Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi share a similar worldview. Partnership has no limits. Okay, well, I think that'll be tested too. It's like, you know what? Let's gang up here together. We'll stick together, and then we'll figure out which one of us survives later. But we know we don't like the West, so they have that common ground. China's proposal called for peace negotiations and respect for national sovereignty, but the 12-point document did not specifically say that Russia must withdraw its troops from Ukraine. There we go. You can read, this is from the BBC if you want to read this. Again, we have links provided for all of these things. And we're going to close back here in the United States. we're going to take a look at Leviticus 19, verse 36. You shall have, this is God talking to Moses, you shall have honest scales, honest weights, an honest ephah, and an honest hin. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And so this was the economy of the day. They used to get things out on scales and weigh things. Okay, you got so much metal, like so much gold. You have, whatever the weight was, it would go for a certain amount. And the point is, God wants honesty when it comes to economic matters. Be honest, be fair. It's all over the Old Testament. All over the Old Testament. So the idea of currency manipulation is not fairness. And frankly, the United States has been using the dollar as a weapon to manipulate prices of things in what they think is their favor. In the last couple of weeks of financial markets and global economics, it's been very rocky, to say the least. And in the last 2 business weeks, really, frankly, from golly, it would have been a week ago Friday, a week ago yesterday, 4 banks went down, 5 in the last 2 weeks. They've crashed. And we have witnessed 2 of the 3 largest bank failures in the history of the United States. And because of this, I don't even know why I'm quoting them, but they get some juice as a ratings agency, although they need to be called out and held accountable too. They've not always been honest. None of these jokers are frankly honest when it comes to financial matters. Moody's Investor Service has downgraded the entire United States banking system to negative. Well, yeah, welcome to the party. Oh yeah, we better downgrade it to save our good name on Wall Street. I mean, all these people are in bed together. Anyway, I digress. Here's a quote from Moody's. We have changed to negative from stable our outlook on the U.S. banking system to reflect the rapid deterioration in the operating environment following deposit runs at Silicon Valley Bank, underwater, Silvergate Bank, underwater, Signature Bank, underwater, and the failures of SVB and SNY. So anyhow, here are the following banks that are done in the United States. Silvergate, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, president of Signature Bank. Oh, by the way, editorial comment would be one Barney Frank. That would be the Barney Frank of the Dodd-Frank legislation that came out of the mess in 2008. And you would think he would understand the rules that he wrote off and signed off on and got all this credit for this wonderful legislation. They couldn't even follow his own legislation, and they ended up bankrupt. And then he comes out, well, I had to make some money. That's wonderful. You could have done it honestly. First Republic Bank is the other one. They got bailed out, $30 billion. And I think some of the big banks, the combination of multiple banks, maybe 5 to 8 banks, chipped in $30 billion to try to bail that thing out. And this weekend, it's getting worse for them. And this mess made its way across the Atlantic to Europe. Switzerland's Credit Suisse required a bailout from the Swiss government. And then today, traction was gaining with an English bank looking to buy Credit Suisse out. But they wanted reassurances and they wanted some backing from the British government. Hey, if we take this thing on, can you float us a few billion? Okay. So we got some issues with the banking system. And then the U.S. Department of Treasury decided to insure all depositors in banks that expose, quote, a systemic risk exception, even those above the insured threshold of $250,000. So if you have an account in the bank, you are insured up to $250,000 by the FDIC. There's insurance for that. If you have an account with cash of over $250,000. Under normal circumstances, the bank would go under. You lose everything over $250,000. And I guess in the case of Silicon Valley Bank, like 95 to 98% of the depositors had balances over $250,000. And so you had a whole bunch of people that were going to lose money. And the two banks that meet this exception include Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. All depositors were made whole. Click on this press release. This is from the U.S. Treasury. This is crazy. The following statement, this is from home.treasury.gov, joint statement by the Department of the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the FDIC. So that'd be Janet Yellen with the Treasury, Federal Reserve Board Chairman Jerome Powell, FDIC Chairman Martin J. Gruenberg. Decisive actions to protect the United States economy. Okay, listen to this. After receiving a recommendation from the boards of the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and consulting with the president, think Joe's got the mental capacity to process what's going on? Secretary Yellen approved actions enabling the FDIC to complete its resolution of Silicon Valley Bank that fully protects all depositors. They have access to their money starting Monday the 13th. No losses associated with the resolution of the Silicon Valley Bank will be borne by the taxpayer. Whatever. Well, I guess that's true. They just create money at the Federal Reserve. They don't tax anybody. They just print money out of thin air. Same thing happened at Signature Bank. All depositors will be made whole. Shareholders and certain unsecured debt holders or bond holders will not be protected. So if you own stock or if you bought debt from any of these banks, tough, you lose. Senior management will also be removed. Highly recommend people to take a look at who was on these boards of management for these banks, especially in the Silicon Valley situation. Every single one of these folks had ties to that mess in 2008, had ties to Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns. They sunk the ship 15 years ago. They're sinking another ship. One guy, he's circling around the internet. I don't know how the guy's not in jail. I mean, he has been involved in failed venture after failed venture. I want to say the president or one of the guys at Silicon Valley Bank was on the board at the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank. I mean, it's incestuous with these people. And of course, none of them are going to go to jail. And a lot of these guys cashed out their shares. A couple of weeks before all this happened, they could see the writing on the wall. They cashed out, stuck millions of dollars in their pockets, and then left other people to hang out to dry. But fear not, the U.S. banking system remains resilient and on a solid foundation, in large part due to the reforms that were made after the financial crisis that ensured better safeguards for the banking industry. Well, they weren't that great because the guy that was part of writing those safeguards was the president of Signature Bank in New York. That'd be Barney Frank. He couldn't even follow these wonderful rules that he allegedly wrote, and then that bank went under. So spare me this nonsense. It's just silliness. But anyway, this exception appears to be on a case-by-case basis as decided, again, by the boards of the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, President Biden, and Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen. We reviewed that in the document above from the Treasury. Now, this was fascinating. And if you're still listening to me, please take the time to listen to the hearings that occurred in the Senate. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford pressed Secretary Yellen. This is just extraordinary. And she admits it. Banks only get the treatment if the failure to protected uninsured depositors would create systemic risk. And again, that's Secretary Yellen And this is from Unusual Whales at Twitter. And I guess it's a he. This is truly incredible. And here's the exchange between Langford and Yellen. And he asks, will every community bank, he was referring to Oklahoma, but it doesn't matter if it's in Oklahoma, Montana, Missouri, Illinois, wherever, will every bank get the same treatment as Silicon Valley Bank? And she says it under oath, banks only get the treatment if the failure to protected uninsured depositors would create systemic risk. And he gets into some questions about foreign investors. I'm going to roll this. I know it's a 4 to 5 minute exchange. This one's 4 minutes. There's some that are a little bit longer with these comments are finished out before his time is done. But he really does a great job of pinning her down with specific questions and gets to the nitty gritty of the situation of it. And she stammers around, and boy, she doesn't want to touch it. But she eventually has to come clean with this. Cannot recommend people listen to this exchange. It tells you, if you're not big enough, if you're not important enough as we see it, we will not protect your financial assets. So, say you run a relatively small business and you got $1 million in the bank that you're using to run business, pay people, pay bills, etc. And if you are in a bank that's in trouble, and if Janet there deems that your bank is not a quote systemic risk to the economy, you lose your $1 million. Well, you can imagine the ripple effects, what's going to happen because of this. And he points this out to her because you have people in smaller, mid-sized banks. And these regional banks, they have $5 to $15 billion in reserves, and people are pulling money out of there like crazy. And again, if a bank does not meet the threshold of exception, and you have deposits over the FDIC insured amount of $250,000, no bailout for you. So you know what people are doing. Money's flying out of smaller banks being deposited into tier one Wall Street banks. And so the big tier one Wall Street banks, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup. And these are the groups that were bailing out. I believe it's First Republic up here. Yeah, let me see. I think that's correct off the top of my head. But they got together, these tier one banks, along with a few other regional banks, had some skin in the game too. Goldman Sachs had some money they were putting up, but they kicked over $30 billion to protect this bank. While in the meantime, money's flying out of these banks and going into the big banks, because at least they know they're going to be protected there. Too big to fail. It's alive and well. Now we can get into some semantics as to whether or not we got some shell games with money with the Federal Reserve. Well, is it QE or quantitative easing where we're putting more money, or are we loaning money? Are you giving them money? I mean, semantics, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care to get into the weeds of that. But the bottom line is these tier one banks, the big boys, money is flowing into these things like crazy, and the rich get richer. And I'm not opposed to making a buck, but do it fairly. And for you people who are not following the rules and putting the system at risk, you need to go behind bars. Sorry, it's illegal. You're taking risk outside the law that is written, and you're not paying any attention to it. It's criminal, and you're putting the whole country at risk because of your recklessness. Your recklessness is affecting the livelihoods of other people and their ability to conduct business. Uh, anyway, I'm done with that. But do think about this coming up this next week. Federal Reserve Board Chair Jerome Powell, they're all getting together. Will they raise interest rates next week? The market says no. The market thinks they have to start cutting interest rates again. Powell has said consistently he's going to continue to raise interest rates to fight inflation. every report of inflation that's been coming in, inflation has been running hotter than what they've expected. They're not able to control it. If they go to cutting interest rates, we're going to have more inflation. If they raise interest rates, it's going to continue to put more stress on the banking system, and money will fly out of smaller banks and go into the bigger banks. They're in a tough spot, and all of it's been because of financial recklessness. So printing money like drunken sailors, well, printing it with no consequence, and then people spending it like drunken sailors. And, the debt limit, that's probably going to start coming up next month into the summer. The debt limit, everybody's saying you got to raise the debt limit. You got to raise the debt limit. So in other words, spend more money. The United States has racked up 31.4 trillion with a T in debt. That's what it looks like. There's the numerical representation. And again, Secretary Yellen has already warned Congress that if the debt limit is not increased, it would be crushing to the banking system. And I mean, that would shut down, say we default as a country. I mean, that would shut down 10% of DC overnight, 10% of the economy, just done, some of the estimates are saying. So if anybody thinks this little thing's going to be over by some little $300 or $400 billion bailout, you got another thing coming. Biden has apparently submitted some budget, $7 trillion budget for 1 year, and we're only taking in 3 or 4 trillion. I'll let $1 trillion slide. All I know is that what he is proposing is at least $3 trillion more dollars than what we're going to take in. I mean, so he's going to want to raise this debt limit upwards of around 34 trillion. What's another 3 trillion? It's just 3. I mean, so these numbers are staggeringly huge. I mean, when you think about 31 trillion, 3 trillion is 10%. 300 billion is 1%. I mean, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So we stuck a 1% band-aid, a 1% band-aid of our debt at this banking thing. And you think 1% is going to make a lick of difference on 31 trillion of debt? Really? I mean, it doesn't have a chance. And it would appear all of this dishonesty in the banking industry is it reaching a tipping point. And God says judgment is ultimately coming. And I know, I don't want to hear about God's judgment. He's so mean. We don't want consequences. Well, we got them coming, and we're going to feel some. And again, because of our dishonesty when it comes to economic business. Micah 6, we're going to close with Micah 6, verses 11 through 13. Can I excuse dishonest scales or bags of false weights? That's God talking. For the wealthy of the city are full of violence, and its residents speak lies. Their tongues are deceitful in their mouths. Therefore, I am striking you severely to ruin you because of your sins. And so it's just a consistent theme throughout Scripture. There are consequences for our actions. There are consequences for sins. And we are on the verge economically of reaping some serious consequences of our dishonest business dealings. And it's very frustrating to watch, some of the same people make the same mistakes over and over and over, putting our country at risk, putting the world economy at risk by their recklessness and their inability to follow common sense, let alone follow the laws that are put before them in the name of, hey, let's try to make some more and just be greedy. Pretty straightforward, but I digress. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please feel free to share with others at PaulthePoke.com. So you can just share the website. Also, if you are not a member, type your email address in right here. Hit subscribe. You'll receive a notification every time we put something out. And these are some of the categories that we've been documenting stuff. Gosh, going back to 2010, August 2010. Here are the main categories: China, Ezekiel 38:39, hell, prophecy, trend update. They're all your SEO tags, your topics, different things we discussed this time. And then lastly, shameless plug, there's the author page at Amazon.com. These books are available. The Gospel 33 AD, Revelation Last Letter, Rapture, and Gabriel, God's Messenger. So, and I don't sell those you have to get them from Amazon. I think one of these is available. I don't know. I don't think I even do that anymore. Where you could click on it and just download it. Nobody did that. They'd rather have the book. Okay, fine. But a little bit about what we got going on. Also, we're putting things out. As the news comes out 2 to 3 times a week. We got the spring feasts coming up in about 2 to 3 weeks, early part of April. Brief discussion about that. Jesus fulfilled the spring feast to the day. Death, burial, resurrection, with Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, when he came the first time, and then sent his Spirit at the birth of the church on Pentecost 50 days later. So we pay attention to those things because Jesus fulfilled the law. He will fulfill all of the law. The fall ones have yet to be fulfilled. I suspect that will be in and around his second coming. Whether he comes to meet us in the air, whether he physically comes back, when he physically comes back to this earth. So they're patterns of history, patterns of prophecy. So interested in the feasts, part of the law. Jesus said he'd fulfill all of it. Every little piece of it. Anyway, appreciate you guys following along. Hope you have a great week. Take care. Bye.